Alright, as I explain spreadsheets, you will need to have your spreadsheets terms paper or document open so that you can go along with it and add the answers as I talk about them. So go to Canvas and download Spreadsheet Terms document. As you do that, and as I explain it, you will click in the little lines and you will type the answer as I talk about them. So just click right in the middle and start typing. The first one on there is a spreadsheet is a grid of rows and columns containing numbers, text, and formulas. So that's what this is. It doesn't have to be Excel, but that's what we are going to use. So any spreadsheet, any grid that has these rows going horizontal and the columns going vertical, and if we can add numbers, text, and formulas, that's a spreadsheet. So let me just demonstrate as I talk about these things. I can add numbers, text, and formulas. I'm going to add these three things up right here. So formulas always start with equals, and then I type a function, and open parentheses, if I click and drag and hit enter, there's now a formula in that cell, and it's right up here in the formula bar, and it's adding those three cells, whatever is right there in those three boxes. It's going to add them up. So I can change those, and it changes the answer because there's a formula there. So that's what a spreadsheet is at the very basic level. The second one on your worksheet that you need to fill in, a workbook is the file Excel creates to store your data. So as soon as we've saved this to a file, give it a name, it's saved, we call that a workbook. The next one, a worksheet is an individual page or tab in the workbook. You can insert or delete worksheets from a workbook. So down here at the bottom, this is called Sheet 1. This is a worksheet. I can click on the others. I have some down here. It's like our assignments that we'll be doing later. They're all worksheets within the workbook. Okay, the next one. Columns of the worksheet appear vertically and are identified by letters at the top of the worksheet. So these vertical columns, and they're labeled with letters. The next one, rows appear horizontally and are identified by the numbers on the left side of the worksheet window. So column headings, row headings, numbers, letters. Okay, a cell, the next one, a cell is the intersection of a row and column and is identified by a cell number. So this is the cell number right here. Or a cell name. And so anytime we click on a cell, it highlights the column letter and the row number, and that is the cell name. Then it goes on, the active cell is the cell that appears outlined with a thick border on the worksheet. So the one that I've clicked on is called the active cell. When we open a new workbook, the default active cell is A1, so it will just start right up there. Okay, the next one, column headings are a column letter above the grid. We've gone over that, but we call that a column heading is the letter. The next one, row heading, a row number on the left side of the grid. So we've got row headings and column headings. Okay, let's talk a little bit about charts. Actually, let me go back to cell that I meant to explain. Okay, a few things that we need to know about the cell. The active cell is when we click on it. It's active, and we can just start typing whatever we want to type. We can type it. Alright, so I typed it. I can click on it now. I can do anything I want to that text. I can change the color of it. I can change the font. I can change the size of the font. So just about anything I can do in Word or PowerPoint, I can do in Excel as well. Now the cell, if I have something in the cell and it's active, I can just, if I start typing or if I type a number here, it deletes what I had. So no need to delete and then put something else in. You just type over the top of it if you want it to change. Now, depending on where I click, it does different things in a spreadsheet, so you have to pay very close attention to that. If I click right in the middle of a cell and drag, I highlight a bunch of cells. So if I want to highlight these, I click right in the middle these numbers. Click right in the middle of the first one and drag down to the bottom one and let go. Now that highlights them, so then I can change the color of the font or the font itself, whatever I want to do. All right, next, if I hover over the outer edge of the cell, it gives me the four-headed arrow, and I click and drag, that moves the contents of the cell to a different cell. So you have to be very careful there if you're wanting to highlight something, and I see this all the time, wanting to highlight something, and you, instead of clicking in the middle, you click on the edge and you drag it down somewhere, and then you have no idea what happened. You have to do a Control-Z to get it back. Okay, so if you want to select right in the middle, if you want to move on the edge, and there's one other place right in the corner, the bottom right hand corner is called the fill handle, and if you click and drag that one, it copies whatever was in the cell. Okay, and that's a really useful tool, not just to copy, but to continue patterns and things. If I do have a pattern here, obviously 1, 2, 3 is a pattern. If I select all of those and then use the fill handle, it will continue the pattern for me. Also, if I have like Monday, Tuesday, and I click both of those, it's going to recognize that pattern and it's going to continue that pattern as long as I want it. So that's really useful, especially if we have a couple of columns of numbers and I've put a formula here to calculate the total of that column. I could even copy that formula and it adjusts it for this column. So if I double click, see now it's adding up that column instead of the other one. So that's really useful, the fill handle. Okay, so that's clicking and dragging in a cell, a few different ways to do it and a few different results. If I select everything and just hit the delete key, not backspace, but delete close to the backspace, I can delete a lot of things out of many different cells. Okay, let's continue. Let's talk about charts. So back to your paper. Chart is the next blank. A pictorial representation of data is what a chart is. Okay, pictorial representation of data, meaning I have data here. If I've got two columns of test scores, let's do this instead. I'll put some test scores here. Okay, so I've got 8 different test scores here of students. Let's say, I'll label it and put some names on it. So I'll use my family names. There's 8 of them. There's 8 people in my family, all J's. So let me do that. Okay, that's the family I grew up in. Okay, so I've got data here, and so if I want to make a pictorial representation of that data, then I can see it a little better. So that's what we call a chart. So if I go to Insert and just grab one of these charts, I want that one. Oops, got a lot of data on there, and now I have a picture to represent it. And it's easy to see who the top score was. It was Julie, and here's my numbers. So let's talk about a chart a little bit, but it's a pictorial representation of data so we can see it better and understand it. Okay, the next one. An embedded chart displays on the same worksheet as the data. Okay, so right here, I've embedded this chart on this worksheet. It's just sitting there on the worksheet. I've embedded it. It's an embedded chart. E-M-B-E-D-D-E-D is how to spell that. The next one, chart area is the background for the chart. Chart area. Background for the chart. It can be filled with a color or pattern. So if I click on the chart and I can right click, or I can go up to the options up here. I can actually double click, makes it kind of easy. It brings up this little dialog box over here. So I can choose a color for it. And it adds that color to the chart area. Let's get rid of this and let's undo that. The next one, axes, A-X-E-S. Axes show the values on the chart. So Excel creates a range of values, or the scale, based on the data. So let me click this plus right here when I've clicked on the chart, and I get a lot of options. So the first one is axes. If I uncheck it, you can see what the axes are. Gives us the values of what we're dealing with. Okay. The next one, axis title, is an optional title for the chart's categories. So axis title, if I check that, I can have a title and label these and say these are the test scores and these are the students. I can do that if I want. It's optional. Okay, the next one, chart title, is obvious, but the chart title is an optional title or name for the chart. So we can have a title or we can uncheck it and not have a title. Next one, a data series is a collection of related values from the worksheet. These values are in the same column or row and translate into the columns, lines, pie slices, and so on. So right here we have a column chart. So the data series is the values that are represented by these columns. Okay, data series. The next one, a data label, is a single value or piece of data from the data series. So I can put data labels on there, and that just tells me the values of each of the columns there, so I can see that easier. That's kind of nice. The next one, a grid line is a horizontal or vertical line that extends across the plot area to make it easier to read and follow the values. Okay, grid lines. So obviously those lines that go across helps us read, oh, this is 70% right there going across. Okay, grid lines. So we can get rid of those if we wanted, but they're pretty helpful. I'll skip a couple of those on purpose. We don't need to know those right now. Okay, legend. Legend is an object that explains the symbols, patterns, or colors used to differentiate the series in the chart. That's the last one on the document. Okay, so the legend, I can have it or I could get rid of it, and it just tells me, oh, these colors are the test scores. But I could, if I had different labels, I could have different colors, and the legend would tell me what they mean. Okay, so that's oh, and then there's a trend line that just kind of is a dotted line that tells us where we are trending from top to bottom or whatever. Okay, that's about it. That's some information about a chart. We're going to use a lot of charts and spreadsheets, some very basics of a spreadsheet. So fill that out, make sure it's filled out, save it, and submit it to Canvas, and then you can start your first assignment.